Good evening and welcome to the April 17th, 2018 meeting of the Guilderland Board of Education. Would you all please silence your cell phones and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda this evening is our high school student representative.
All right, good evening, everyone. I hope your day has been good so far. So let's start with in regards to school news. Before spring break on March 29th, the GHS Annual Culture Fair was held where students were able to represent their country through a boot or performance. The GHS ACT test is being held on Saturday, April 14th. And quarter 3 ended last Friday, which means there's only 25% school year left. Student government. The student government is at the moment planning how elections for next year's officers will work for the student government and classes like 2021, 2022, etc. With music, students this month are participating in the NYSSMA Majors Festival, where they showcase a solo by voice or by their instrument. On May 3rd, select instrumental and singing groups are performing at the GHS Spring Concert. So that's all I have for today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we move to public comment number 1, and we have 2 individuals signed up this evening. The first is John Dempsey.
Hi. I was actually, I think, hoping to catch number 2. I just wanted to thank everybody for reinstating, on behalf of Guilderland Music Parents and Friends, the music instrument funding that had been at risk in earlier proposals of the budget. So we're thrilled to see that come back in. We know every year presents fiscal challenges, and we certainly appreciate how hard everybody works to maintain the breadth and quality of all the programs that we have for our students. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next we have Kim Blasiak.
Sorry, I have a buddy tonight. I actually have a really simple one this time. For your policies, policy 4321.9, I have a suggestion, like a strong suggestion, where it says recommendation for declassification. If the student has been receiving special education services, but it is determined by the Committee on Special Education that the student no longer needs special education services and can be placed in a regular educational program on a full-time basis, the recommendation shall. Could you just possibly leave out and can be placed in a regular educational program on a full-time basis? It makes it seem, and it may not be a big deal to you, that special education is a place, and it is not a place, it is an accommodation, and you don't want that on your policy because you don't want a parent, I mean, I don't know if Lisa could even, like, if she could comment to it at some later point, but you don't want your parents thinking that special education is a place. It's just an additional service. It's not something that your kid is stuck in. And there are also students who are receiving special education services, such as my son, who are in gen ed classes, who are in just the typical classes with everyone else. So all I highly suggest is that you just take that part out so it doesn't seem like you're sticking the kids in a place. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I think we have both of those, or that policy on for a first read this evening, so we'll keep it on for a first read and then send it back to policy or make that modification and then bring it back next time, but it's only information this evening. So
policy is meeting on Monday, so we can wordsmith that.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, now we move to our consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from the regular meeting on March 20th, 2018, as well as the budget workshop on April 10th, 2018. We have the CPSE and CSE recommendations, personnel action items, and the financials. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Seema, second Alan. Are there any questions? Alan?
Can we just take the financial stuff off? Because I think the financials in the budget, especially when it comes to the reserves that you put in later in the agenda, and also the sheet that shows the fund balance, is going to strike a lot of questions and conversation during the budget.
Okay, so do you want all the financials or just the
I don't care
fund
about,
balance? Or
I care about the treasurer's report, but we're not going to talk about the school lunch,
Okay.
nor are we going to talk about the treasurer's report. We'll probably talk mainly about the fund balance, I would guess.
Okay, so
Maybe revenue and
Number
expenses.
number 5 and number 1?
1, 2, and 5.
1, 2, and 5. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, with the exception of items 1, 2, and 5 from the financial sections? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes.
So I know the consent agenda sometimes lacks the drama for such an important event as appointing our new high school principal. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. Michael Piscatelli, who will take over as our leader in the building on July 1st, 2018. So congratulations, Mike.
Here with my wife Karen and my kids Evan and Allie and my secretary Jen and all my colleagues. I just wanted to say thank you to the Board of Education, to Dr. Wiles, to the district office team, and to the members of the interview committee for having the confidence in me to select me for this position. And I really just wanted to say I'm truly, truly honored to accept this position tonight. I'm really excited about leading Gilliland High School. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you.
Okay, next we move to information items, curriculum and instruction. Damien?
Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get Tim on the screen here. Linda, do you have him or not? Okay. All right, I'm going to move on then for a second. Just starting off with some good news, I'm very pleased to report that the following teams have qualified for the 2017-18 Winter Scholar Athlete Award. They are the girls basketball team, gymnastics, ice hockey, boys cross-country skiing, girls cross-country skiing, boys swimming, boys indoor track, and girls indoor track. And to achieve this award, again, they have to have a collective 90-plus average for the entire team. So congratulations to all of them. My second item is somewhat of an announcement, but also an invitation to all of the members of the Board of Education. Included with your materials is the invitation for the annual ENL Extravaganza to be held on Thursday, May 3rd in the Farnsworth Middle School Cafetorium beginning at 5 p.m. There will be lots of great food, and it will give you a chance to meet some of the families of our 250-plus ENL student population, which is growing every day. Did Mike leave? Well, congratulations to the Guilderland High School students, 9th grader Anish Mupudi, who won 3rd honorable mention in the Grand Prize Senior Division, and 10th grader Surab Kumar, who won the National Grid Award in the Senior Division. And this is for the Greater Capital Region Science and Engineering Fair, which of course Mr. Piscatelli is the leader of that department, so congratulations to him and the students involved. And next, we want to extend congratulations to Farnsworth Middle School teachers Jen Cairns and Corey Rogotsky, who coordinate the Character Education Committee and the North Star Student Leadership Team. These two groups are being recognized for leadership, service, and excellent performance, as well as the distinction they hold with their peers in accordance with the highest standards of good character. At Farnsworth Middle School, there is an active group of about 21 teachers promoting the 6 pillars of good character. They are respect, responsibility, community, perseverance, caring, and honesty. And this is through our Building Cabinets Character Education Committee. The 2017-18 charge of the committee aligns with the Dignity for All Students Act, known as DASA, where each school will establish a DASA steering team to help plan, coordinate, facilitate, and evaluate our building-level activities that pertain to the tenets of DASA. Furthermore, this group arranges professional development opportunities for teachers and support staff and encourages student-led school climate and character education initiatives. It organizes school-wide activities to educate students and raise awareness about bullying and harassment. Training provides instruction in the following areas: civility, citizenship, character, education, tolerance, respect for others, and dignity for all. Greater understanding of race, culture, and ethnicity, and awareness of sex discrimination, stereotypes, gender identity should result from these experiences. and they will be honored at the 15th Annual Champions of Character Award banquet on April 26th of 2018. So again, congratulations to Jen and Corey for their great work. And we have some news from the music department. Each year, the choral and instrumental ensembles from the Guilderland Central School District attend the NYSSMA, which is the New York State School Music Association's major ensemble evaluations. In these events, large ensembles receive written and recorded comments, suggestions, and critiques from 2 adjudicators. The music performed is specifically selected from graded literature approved by NYSSBA and groups from across the state to strive for perfect performance. Attending the instrumental evaluation at Shaker High School on April 17th is the 8th grade band, which is led by Mrs. Alexis Ziomek. That's at 11:25. Attending the choral evaluation at Bethlehem High School on April 17th through 19th is the GHS Chamber Choir, led by Mrs. Regine Teeter, the FMS Select Choir by Mrs. Terry Muhorter, and the GHS Concert Choir, again by Mrs. Regine Teeter. Attending the instrumental evaluation at Ballston Spa High School on April 26th is the High School Wind Ensemble, led by Mrs. Kathleen Ellinger, the FMS Select Band, led by Mrs. Alexis Ziomek, and the 7th grade band, led by Mr. Jason Utter. These are free events, they're open to the public, and we want to wish good luck to our musicians and their teachers at this evaluation festival. Excuse me. And finally, from our math department at Guilderland High School, we want to extend congratulations to our Math League team, who came in first place in the Albany County for High School Math League again this year. The team placed 27th in the state out of 153 schools that participated. We also want to extend congratulations to 11th grader Bill Guo, who was one of the top scoring students in the state with a perfect score on at least one of the contests and total cumulative of 28 out of 36 possible credits. Some good news.
Great. Thank you, Damien. Are there any questions for Damien? Okay. Now we move to school business information. Neil?
Thank you, Christine. First topic this evening is the District Health Insurance Committee recommendations for the 2018-19 school year. And the District Health Insurance Committee consists of representatives of the 10 bargaining units, along with Severance and myself. We met 4 times during the 2017-18 school year to attend informational sessions, review health insurance plan benefit designs, and identify opportunities for cost savings. Some of the key issues for 2017-18, talk first about premium trends. The district's medical premiums continue to trend well below the 7.8% projected national average for public employers. Prescription drug costs are trending downward slightly, with national trends of 10.3% for non-specialty drugs and 17.7% for specialty drugs. The district's prescription drug expenses are trending downward as well, resulting in a projected 3.5% increase for next year. National surveys show that while typically less than 1% of all medications are specialty drugs, those drugs account for 35% of the overall drug costs. So a big impact with specialty drugs. The Capital Area Schools Health Insurance Consortium, to which we belong, known as CASHIC, continues to grow. This year, East Greenbush, Averill Park, Troy, and Broad Alban Perth joined the consortium. Next year, Fonda Fultonville will be joining as well. The consortium started in 1994 with 3 schools, and we're now up to 19 and will be 20 next year. So a lot of growth from large schools in the area. The district explored changing the copay structure of our plans in concert with other schools in the consortium that would result in the loss of grandfather status under the Affordable Care Act. The loss of grandfather status would result in a premium increase. However, that increase could be more than offset by efficiencies associated with a larger pool of covered employees and retirees under a common plan design. So we spent a lot of time talking about that this year and the benefits of making such a change. And the recommendations for next year based on premium rate increases. I'll just read down the plans. Our Blue Shield PPO plan, an increase of 6.5% next year. Blue Shield Point of Service plan, 6.4%. MVP HMO, 4.8% increase. CDPHP EPO, 4.7% increase. We offer several Medicare Advantage plans. Our Blue Shield PPO plan is 11%. Our out-of-area plan is increasing 8.8%. CDPHP's PPO plan is increasing 2.2%, and their HMO offering is increasing 3.1%. We'll also be continuing our prescription drug coverage, which is Express Scripts, and we'll also be offering Canna RX, which is our prescription mail order drug plan for maintenance medications. And again, that category of expenses increased by 3.5%.
Neil, it says at the last paragraph before the listing, it said 27 for the 2017-18.
That's an error. It should be
Okay.
2018-19.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Are there any questions about this? Okay, Neil, thank you.
My next item this evening for information is a general fund restricted reserves plan. This is something that the New York State Comptroller has been urging school districts to do through audits that they conduct, and they're looking for each school district to have a plan looking at their reserve funds. And again, there's about 13 that school districts are eligible to participate with under New York State law. And basically, what the controller would like to see in these plans is some common elements associated with each reserve that a school district has. So you're going to see headings for each of the reserves that talk about the creation, the funding, the use of the reserve, and the monitoring of the reserve. So you'll see that format consistently throughout the document. We currently have 8 different reserves: a workers' comp reserve, unemployment, retirement contribution, tax certiorari, employee benefit and accrued liabilities, reserve for repairs, and a capital reserve. And those reserves total just over, just over $7.7 million. So within the document, you will see each of them described with the headings, the balances, how it was established, how it's funded, how it's used, how it's being monitored. This plan was reviewed with the audit committee, and the committee reviewed it and is recommending that the board adopt it. Again, tonight this is just being shared for information, and if the board's comfortable with it, we'll bring it back at the next meeting for approval.
Okay, are there any questions for Neil?
Yeah.
Alan?
Are we going to take any of these reserves up at the end of the year?
It will depend on where we are at the end of the year with estimated fund balance.
If we look at the fund balance report that you have in today's thing, and it says you're going to have about a $1.9 million surplus, so are you going to put stuff in those reserves, or what are you going to do with that?
If we end the year, we will have that opportunity to talk to the board about resolutions to fund those reserves. They have to be done via resolution. Again, I would say we still have part of April, May, and June to go, so we haven't finished the school year yet, so we still have expenses that are going to be incurred. I wouldn't recommend at this point that we take any action until we see where we are at the end of the year, which is typical, and then we'll have the opportunity, depending on where we are when we close out the fiscal year, to be able to put money in reserves at that point in time.
Any other questions? Teresa?
Just to clarify, Neil, this is just basically allowing for the establishment of these to be created, and the amounts are what's kind of up in the air, because like you said, we haven't finished the year yet.
Correct. So the idea here, and we'll also talk about it when we talk about the budget and the property tax report card, it's a reporting requirement this year when we talk about with the budget to have that document attached, so it's going to have a lot of the same information. So it's kind of tying that together, but it's a plan that the district would have, the board would adopt and approve, an awareness document, which reserves do we have, when were they created, how are they funded,
Establishing a plan.
and so on and so forth. So the idea is it's transparent, it's communicated, it's talked about, so I think that's the controller's concept here, is to make sure there's a document that can be discussed each year. So again, the background information is there and the current balances are there, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end of the year, should sufficient resources be available, to talk about whether we want to add to any of these reserves, and if so, how much. But that would be predicated on where we are at the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Neil. Now we move to superintendent information. Marie?
Okay, thank you. My first item, back on last week, April 11th, 166 eighth grade students were inducted into the Junior National Honor Society at Farnsworth Middle School. So we want to congratulate all of the students and their parents for this great recognition. And I want to thank Mr. Laster, our two faculty advisors, the administrative team for all of the work they did to put together such a wonderful event. And I want to recognize Gloria, Seema, and Teresa, who are all on hand to congratulate our newest inductees, including a member of the Gito family. So it's extra special. But thanks to all. It's the first awards event of the year, and it's always very special.
Yes.
So congratulations to all. My next item is tomorrow. We are hosting a job fair here at Guilderland High School, and we will be hosting 40 different school districts and other organizations who have signed up to participate to meet prospective candidates for various openings. I want to give a lot of credit to Lynn Severance, who we've sent home not feeling well, and her team who put this together each year, and it grows and grows each time. So we're looking forward to a full house tomorrow, and we know that we too will have some hiring needs, so we're hoping to find some good candidates ourselves. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow. And then last, by way of information, we have not had a lot of time in this forum to talk about an item that we included in our spending proposal for next year, and that is a school-based mental health clinic. So I want to just say a little bit about that and give the board a chance to ask any questions. But as you know, included in our 2018-19 budget is the addition of a school-based mental health clinic that will be housed in either the middle or the high school. We're working on that right now. The clinic is part of a collaboration among the Capital Region BOCES and Parsons Child and Family Center, also known as Northern Rivers, and will provide students and families on-site counseling and care coordination. Clinic staff will be Parsons employees. They will serve students and families referred to them by our school district pupil personnel staff, our counselors, social workers, and psychologists, for example, as an alternative to referring students and families to community-based settings for clinical treatment, which are often difficult to access. Clinic staff does not provide the same services as our school district pupil personnel staff. The licensed school-based clinic will provide 12-month access for enrolled students and families, options for individual, group, and family treatment, links to psychiatric and medical management services, and so on. The clinic will have the capacity to serve 25 students, and the cost to the district is $35,000, and it's through the Community Schools COSER, which is brand new to BOCES this year. And it does require an in-kind contribution from the district for office space, access to the phone, and to internet. So we are one of many school districts who are taking advantage of this new opportunity, and we're very excited about it. It's another layer of support for our students who may need it. Are there questions? Seema?
So you said it's going to be either at the middle or high school, but it is open to all the students?
It would be open to all students, K-12. We're working with Joe Dragone from BOCES and with Parsons to figure out which site would work the best for this kind of a program. And we will work on providing busing for children who, for example, if they are at one of our elementary buildings and need to come, we would find a way to get them to the school. We want to eliminate as many barriers to care as we possibly can.
So the staff are Parsons employees?
Yes.
And so then they'll work in coordination with our staff here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm glad that we were able to participate.
We're excited about this opportunity, and I think it's a great way to certainly not supplant, but to supplement the wonderful support that our current staff already provide. But when we have a child who needs to be referred to a clinical setting, often there's months-long wait before they can be seen. And students are sometimes needing to be out of school in order to make the appointment. So we see lots of positives here. Quicker turnaround time for being seen and less time missed from school because, depending on which building, it could be a walk down the hall as opposed to, a trip to wherever they may have to go. So
Their hours are beyond the school day, so, they're accommodating families
yes.
as well.
So they will extend beyond the school day. They'll be open during school breaks over the summer. And actually, they will have kind of a hotline, so someone will be available 24/7 to take a phone call. So it's a terrific very cost-effective tool to add yet another layer of support for our students.
And families.
And families.
As for location, would it be a classroom? Like, how does that work?
They need an office, essentially. So we have a couple options, both at the middle and high school, and we're kind of weighing, which one would be best. The folks are coming out here for a site visit at the end of the month, and we may ask them to look at our options and give us some advice about which makes the most sense. There's a certain level of confidentiality that's required. We also want to think about where the space is relative to the entrance of the building, for example, so it's, relatively easy to get to. So those are some of the things that we're working through.
Okay. Alan?
Speaking of that, how we, with all the security issues that people are concerned about, how will we handle the security for this clinic?
You mean beyond the school day? Well, that is something we'll have to talk about with them to see whether or not we would have some kind of system where they can be buzzed in, or, we're going to need to work through that.
Is there a possibility they can have their own separate entrance where you'd have to go there and they could go in and it would be closed off after school? And what I'm thinking is, there's an outside entrance that you'd go in when school's closed, and when school's open, they would come through the regular portals that we have here, and the entrance that would be after hours would be locked and closed, and then that way you'd have the security coming through the school when the school's closed. They wouldn't have access to get into school, so that we wouldn't have to worry about any security issues around that.
That's certainly a possibility, and that's one of the things we're looking at in terms of proximity to a door to the outside. So that's a great point, and one we'll be talking about.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Murray. Sure. Now we move to board president information. There are 4 items this evening, and the first relates to the special board meeting. So there's a Board of Education, the Board of Education established a special meeting date of Wednesday, April 25th, 2018 at 8 a.m. in the district office for the purpose of voting on the 2018-19 Board of Cooperative Educational Services budget and election. So everybody put that on your radar and on your calendar. I believe there is a committee meeting after that, although I can't remember which one. Doesn't one committee meet at 8:15 on that day?
Audit and Finance.
Audit?
Oh, audit. I can't make that date, I know. Doing the high school food pickup thing.
Okay.
Okay.
8 a.m.
Yeah, I won't be there either.
Yep, I won't be there either.
Oh, boy.
That's 1, 2, 3.
I'll be there.
Okay.
You need everybody else?
We'll need at least 5.
Oh, 5, okay.
We need 5.
Audit's that day, so I'll be there, unless, barring some health issue.
Okay.
Okay. The next item relates to the upcoming Board of Education election. The deadline for Board of Education candidates to return their completed petition was April 16th, 2018. There are 3 3-year terms on the board that expire June 30th, 2018, and 1 2-year term that expires May 15th, 2018. The names of the candidates and their order on the ballot will be as followed: Christine Hayes, Sean McGuire, Seema Rivera, and Benjamin Goes. Candidates do not run for a specific seat on the board. The individuals with the 4 highest vote totals will be elected. The candidate elected with the lowest total votes serves for the 2-year term of office and will begin their term on May 16th, 2018. The 3-year terms will run from July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021. The 2-year term will run from May 16th, 2018 until June 30th, 2020. The next item relates to voter registration. The public vote on the school budget and Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. Voter registration is required in the Guilderland Central School District. To vote, you must be 18 years old, a U.S. citizen, and a resident of the Guilderland School District for at least 30 days prior to the vote. If you are not registered with the school district or the Albany County Board of Elections, you must do so prior to the vote. The district has established 3 registration dates for residents to vote at the May 15th, 2000 budget vote and election. You may register at any time between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. at any of the elementary schools, or from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the district office on the following dates: Thursday, May 3rd, 2018, Monday, May 7th, 2018, and Tuesday, May 8th, 2018. You may also register with the Albany County Board of Elections during their normal business hours, which are Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. If you are not sure which elementary school to vote, please refer to our website. There's a link on there that's called School Budget News, and use the quick link on the right that's labeled Voter Absentee Ballot Information. You can see if you're registered and where you vote in the school district. And the final item for board president information is a variety of policies that are up for a first read. One of those is the one that Kim Blasiak spoke about at the beginning of the meeting. Barbara, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
We'll talk those policies.
So the policies are all here on the board portal. Please take a close look at them and let the policy committee know if you have any questions or concerns. And now we move to action items. School business management action. Neil?
Okay, first item this evening is a resolution to approve the agreement with Utica College for students to have internship and practicum experience at our school district.
May I have a motion to approve the internship agreement? Seema, second Teresa. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0.
Next item is reserve funds dissolution and establishment, and this is a resolution to dissolve the 2014-15 tax certiorari reserve fund and to apply the current balance of $353,148 to fund the establishment of the 2017-18 tax certiorari reserve for the purpose of meeting anticipated judgments and claims arising out of tax certiorari proceedings in accordance with education law.
May I have a motion to approve the reserve funds dissolution and establishment? Judy, second Gloria. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0.
Next is a resolution authorizing the destruction of ballots from the 2017 school district election. By law, we need to hold on to the ballots from an election for at least a 6-month period, and after that time, the board can choose to allow them to be destroyed if there's been no proceeding instigated during that time period. So our council is advising that we should do this on an annual basis once we get beyond the 6-month mark, and if there's no claim, which we currently don't have for the last election, that we would go ahead and be able to destroy those ballots.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the destruction of the ballots? Teresa, second Kathy. Are there any questions or comments? Neil, what have we done with them up until this point? Have they just been destroyed after a certain period of time without?
Yeah, we just haven't had the resolution from the board, so it should be a part of the formal process, though, for the board to approve that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0.
Next is general fund budgetary transfers. So we have 5 transfers for you. They total $87,877, and they're detailed in your materials.
May I have a motion to approve the general fund budgetary transfers? Gloria, second Kathy. Are there any questions? Alan?
Since we just did that tax certiorari reserve, how come we didn't, I see we're putting money into this refund of property taxes. Why wouldn't we have used that reserve to do that instead of doing a transfer from Social Security?
Those are 2 separate things. The reserve is separate from, this is the budget that we're talking about right now. So the budgetary transfers, line item by transfers within the budget. The tax certiorari reserve is tied to a particular year, so it's for payment of judgments and claims from the 2014-15 school year, which we don't have anymore.
Okay.
So the budget's accommodating tax certiorari claims from the current school year, which is 17-18.
I got you now.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Gloria, you voted yes on this? Okay. Passes 9-0. Thank you, Neil. And now we move to superintendent action items. Marie.
Okay, the the main item under superintendent action tonight is the adoption of the spending plan for the 2018-2019 school year. So late in the day today, we made a change to the worksheet, and I believe everyone has a copy in front of him or her, and was it emailed to Tim and to Barbara?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so they have it.
Not the worksheet, but the explanation.
The explanation of the change. So just by way of summary, before the board begins their discussion, last week when we were here for the workshop, we had a wide-ranging conversation about the additional revenue that we realized as a result of the completion of the state budget, and a discussion about potential restorations and additions to the spending plan for next year. And at the conclusion of the discussion, it was the consensus was that we would come back to you this evening with a worksheet that would include all of the items that were under discussion last week. So in the worksheet that you have, we have included 2 additional expenses. One was the pole vault landing system that we talked about for $13,400. The other was the second side of the Guilderland High School electric sign. Since we last saw you, we were able to go out and get some costs associated with that, and so that's included at $16,925. The other piece that we discussed was the inclusion of the .2 FTE in order to offer American Sign Language, and that is included in the 1.0 FTE from the high school. And I know that since last Tuesday, Mr. Letzik and Marcia Ranieri were able to meet with a potential candidate to teach the course, because that has to come together as well. So Barbara, I'm saying this for you. I know you were worried that it wouldn't be counted in the budget, but we do have that .2 for American Sign Language budgeted at this point. The other piece I'll mention before I turn it over to Neil for a bit is that we wanted to make sure we could fit all of this under the tax cap. And so you'll see one other adjustment that was an idea, I think, as we sat around this table last week. What you'll see there is a small reduction in the total pool of unassigned teaching positions. So what this would recommend, if the board wanted to go down this pathway, would to have 4.7 unassigned FTEs rather than 5.0. That's a savings of $19,500, and if you will, it gives us room under the tax cap to add those additional items without adjusting the amount of fund balance that we're trying to pull back a little bit. You'll recall that our recommendation last week was to use $100,000 less of fund balance in next year's spending plan. Now, obviously, all of these things are up for discussion, but we're just trying to capture the discussion that we had last week in this worksheet. And then there's one more variation on a theme that came to light this afternoon, and I will turn that to Neil to talk about some change in the assessed values in the town.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. When we develop the superintendent's budget, we always have to estimate assessment and if there's going to be growth or not, and we look at that historically. So we have a record of assessment growth within the town of Guilderland. We look at that over a period of 5 years, and we use an average. And town's been doing very well over the past few years, and they have been averaging an increase of about $25 million annually in terms of assessment growth. So using that as a factor, we went a little more conservative. We used $15 million as potential assessment growth in the calculations that we did in terms of estimating the tax rate associated with the superintendent's budget. So when we did that, we had a figure of 1.73% for an estimated tax rate increase across all the towns. What we heard today, though, is that the town has not experienced the kind of assessment growth that it has in the past, and we heard from the assessor who wanted to give us a heads up. Thankfully, her timing was very good in terms of tonight's meeting to be able to share that information. Right now, on the books, they're only showing growth of about $7.5 million, which is well below what the average has been. What I will tell you is there's still fluctuations in this number. They're not done finalizing the assessment. That doesn't happen until July 1st. That's not atypical of any other year. So every year we're going out with an estimate in terms of what are projected assessments and what does that yield in terms of an estimated tax rate. But given the fact that we're about half of what we had anticipated in terms of assessment growth, went back and recalculated what the estimated tax rate increase would be based on the budget that you have before you tonight. It would go to 1.97%. So it is an increase. We're at 1.73% with the superintendent's budget. Last week, with the adjustments we made, we're at 1.72%. Now with the change of a lowered estimate of potential assessment growth, we're at 1.97%. And you'll see that highlighted at the top right of the sheet that we distributed this evening. So just want to make everybody aware of that. Again, we won't know what that actual number is until the roll is certified by July 1st, but try to get as close as we can in terms of what information we have available in estimating the tax rate increase.
Neil, as a basis for comparison, do you have any idea where we were last year at this time? If you were to give us this number?
We ended up pretty close with where we were. I don't recall exactly where it was, but I think we were right in the ballpark of around that 1.6%, if I remember correctly.
Is it likely, or could it possibly happen that it would be below the 7.47? In other words, because we're so close on what we can do here.
Well, it doesn't affect anything on the worksheet below and any decisions that you make budgetarily. What it will affect is, the tax rate itself.
Well, that's what I'm concerned. We're so close to the 2%. Is that going to?
Well, that's not the 2% we have to worry about. That's with the tax levy at the bottom. And the tax levy we're fine on still. It's just a matter of how much in taxes, what would you need in terms of a change in tax rate to generate the same number of tax dollars? So with assessments being lower, we would have to increase the tax rate to generate the same amount of dollars to meet our target for the tax levy. So this doesn't affect the tax levy. It's not a 2% issue. What we are a little worried about is we need to adopt a budget. We need to indicate to the taxpayers in a newsletter that we'll be generating this week of what the estimated tax rate increase will be. So it's kind of along the lines of that, where we are right now, and understanding that it could change by the time we set tax rates in August.
Seems like there's an awful lot of growth, but I'm surprised that it's so much less.
Well, what Karen Van Wegenen explained to me is that some of the things are coming online. They haven't come to fruition yet, so they only got partial increases, like the hotel in front of Crossgates.
Yeah.
Only a small portion of that was completed in time to be assessed as part of this cycle. Next year, they'll have the full assessment. So she said there's several of those things in the town that just are ready to come online, but aren't there yet as of March 1st, which is the assessment date that they're using.
Seema.
Can we ask questions about this, or is it all together?
Yep, we can ask questions about
Okay. So I just want to understand correctly. So this budget from last week reduced the number of unassigned teaching positions
By 0.3.
by 0.3, but now it's included the sign.
Yes, is the short answer. So we restored 1.0 FTEs to the high school for electives, and 0.7 of those were defined. There was 0.3 that, as of the end of the night of our workshop, the 0.3 were undefined. So since then, 0.2 of that 0.3 have been earmarked for the sign language course. That leaves Tom 0.1 to decide what to do with for now.
I guess.
And Mike.
I guess I'm having questions about how, because we've talked about class size since the fall, and so all of a sudden it's changed, and now the cost for the sign is in there, which we've never talked about since last meeting. So I don't know how other people feel, but to me it seems like we're kind of throwing that in the last second and adjusting things around to make us, not use the fund balance, but shift money around. But we haven't really talked about that. And if I remember correctly, we didn't hear from the buildings, if that was something that they were asking for.
Oh, actually, I went back through some old meeting minutes from the district leadership meeting on November 20th. And I know that Cliff identified it as a priority, but then I remember Tom talking last week that Anne Marie had also mentioned it as a priority. So it was on my radar, and I've discussed it with other board members.
Right, but when we brought up the table and we had all of the, I guess, things that were important from all of the board members together, that never came up. And then I guess my other question, I know we kind of talked about this only since, what was it, last week about the sign, that Farnsworth had a sign, or has a sign, and it was completely fundraised to bring that sign about. So it seems like we're kind of like putting this money in at the last minute, and I would love a sign. Who wouldn't want to have money towards a sign? It just seems like, in terms of process, we're kind of like shifting things around at the last second, but no one's ever talked about it, no one brought it up before. I'm not really sure.
I can't believe you're saying this, because I was having the exact same conversation with myself after the last meeting, because I even got drawn into the thing about the sign, the no sign, and I just feel like I feel the same way you do. At the last minute, all of a sudden, we just kind of, like, we grabbed at the pole vault and we started putting things in without tying it to any thought process about priorities or where we should be looking. We just kind of put things in. And I agree with you with the sign, because the signs have always been fundraised. I know at the middle school, that's what we did. They fundraised for the signs, and I know that's how it's done. And it's nice to be able to give people things or tell the high school, oh, you need to do sign language now, but it's almost like micromanaging. We were doing that rather than saying, what are the priorities? And I think Dr. Wiles did a great job on the district team of matching the priorities that they're working with and what people were saying, whether it was the board, the community, the students, and built a budget around those. And then at the last minute, I felt like we went totally off process and just said, oh, let's do that, let's throw that in, and it didn't fit with the whole tenor of the process. I had the same exact reaction.
I remember hearing Regan, I guess, talk about the pole vaulting thing, because that was sort of a concern to me. That wasn't totally out of the blue. I'm not comfortable with putting the money for the sign there. We do have the one side, and it would be nice to have a second side, but I think we're so close on $4,000 off of where we could be, that this would give us a little bit of a cushion. I'm comfortable with a pole vault landing system, because Regan seemed to feel that it could be a danger. I'm not comfortable with the sign, and I would just as soon have that off. And if somebody wanted to do so, I'd rather see it go back to the full-time teaching than to the sign at this point.
Okay. Teresa?
I was just going to say I can agree with what everyone is saying, because money is money. But at the same time, it's our high school sign. It's our high school. We only have half a sign, and it's not even completed, in the sense that when that sign is off, we have nothing that indicates that it's Guilderland High School, other than if you look at the building in the dark, it kind of is etched in the front of the school. I think if we can use whatever funding that they paid for half of the sign, I think it is kind of a goodwill that the board is saying, okay, we'll pay for the rest of it, or if they pay us back. But for the meantime, just to have a fully functioning sign in front of our high school, I don't want to look like the Bad News Bears when it comes to what our school in the front of it looks like. We had an antiquated, very old sign in front of the school for years, and that was taken down to put up this other sign. I had talked to Cliff back in the fall, and he had indicated to me that it was fundraised, they were putting up half the sign, and when they got more money, they were going to do the other half of the sign. I just don't want it to look half done, and that's what it looks like. And it's our high school. It's our high school. It's something that we should be proud to show. And right now, if that sign, for whatever reason, wasn't plugged in, somebody would be coming here for the college fair, and it wouldn't even show anything that shows that it's Guilderland High School. we have athletics that come here, we have music, we have plays that are done here, and if you're coming from the opposite side for whatever reason, and not knowing where you're going, wouldn't know where you're going. It's the high school. I just feel like we should be proud of our high school, and we should
But
we should be proud of every
school. We are
We should
proud of
present
it.
it in the best light.
That's not
We
fair,
should
though, to say.
present it, we should present it in the best light, and I don't think we're doing it.
So I think
But to say we're not proud is not right.
we should give everybody an opportunity
yeah.
to comment. Alan had his hand up.
Yeah, well, last year, I think we had 4 people in unassigned. This year, we're gonna have 4.7. So that's 7.
Barbara's on FaceTime.
Oh,
Okay.
I have her here, too.
She's in
Oh,
two
geez,
places
she's
at
in
once.
2 places.
All right, Barb, I'm going to face you towards Linda because she has to see you, okay?
Okay, so like I was saying, so last year in the budget,
Barbara, hold
I
on.
believe we had
Barbara,
4.
you have to sign off of one of those.
Yeah, because we're getting back, fee.
because I'm down to 1%, so I will sign off from you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, last year, I believe, in the budget, we had 4 unassigned. This year, we're gonna go from 4 to from 5 back down to 4.7. 4.7, I think, is pretty much unprecedented. We've never had that. And when we look at the guidelines, every one of the school things is within the guidelines. So again, like I said last week, the guidelines are the guidelines. We should be managing to the guidelines. We're making exceptions to the guidelines to add staff for smaller class sizes, which I'm in favor of smaller class sizes, but that's not what our guidelines and our policies say. So I don't understand why we're doing that. Second thing, again, I'm a business person. I've never seen anybody put a half a sign up when they put a business up. I know you people think this is a school, but it's also a business. And that's our appearance. And when you drive by here and you see half a sign, in my opinion, that doesn't shed light on us as a business. Because I've never seen a business put up half a sign. And the amount of the sign is $17,000. $17,000 on a $100 million budget gets lost in rounding. Every year, we seem to migrate to the minute detail of some small, penny-ante little thing instead of looking at the big picture. I've had an open question since the first budget meeting of how we're going to spend $4.6 million, and all I got last week for an answer was, we went through the budget process. You didn't answer the question. No one answered the question. I find that very disheartening to me. Very disheartening. Because I'll tell you what, when you look at the surplus sheet this year, we're going to have, according to the sheet, 1.8 million. Right now we have 62 million, which is approximately 2/3, and we have 3/4 of the year done. We're not going to spend $35 million in 3 months. That's $10 million a month. We're going to have a surplus. And we're over here putzing around for $19,000. I think that just is appalling. We're all educated people. And to look at the ant instead of looking at the big picture, I don't understand it. I just don't get it. And I've said that for the last 4 years on the board. Next year, you're going to have a $2 to $3 million surplus, just like you are going to this year. I'd bet $100 on it right now as I sit here, before you put things in the slush funds. And the taxpayers are paying for that. Last year, you overcharged me on my taxes because we had a surplus. This year, you're going to overcharge me again on my taxes. Until the taxpayers come in here and really comment that you're getting overcharged, you guys are going to continue to do that. This year, I have nothing to lose because I'm not running. I'm purposely not running, so I can actually speak my mind. Like I said, I find it very disheartening that that's how we operate.
Does Barbara have her hand up?
Yes, Christine?
Yes, Barbara.
I just wanted to say that I'm totally in favor of the sign, as I think Teresa pointed out. You know, having a half a sign to identify ourselves is really crazy. We could take, I know Judy's concerned about the $4,000 little wiggle room that we have, take another 5 or 10 out of the fund balance. We know we're going to fulfill that, you know, come July 1st. It just seemed silly to be arguing, as Alan pointed out, over $100 million budget over a sign that identifies your high school. So I'm totally still in favor of it.
they say that it was only brought up at the last meeting. The whole purpose of having these meetings is for citizens and board members to bring forth new ideas until tonight. And, I don't see a hue and a cry of the public out there saying, we don't want this sign. If it had been that radical an idea, I'm sure we would have a big turnout of kids or parents or whatever. I think everybody sees the need for it. We know that Cliff thinks it should be there. Tom told us that Mrs. McManus would be jumping up and down for joy. We need something out front there, and as I said, with what we know is coming down in the way surplus, if we take another few $1,000s out of our fund balance, it isn't going to hurt the kids, it's not going to hurt the district. We're not talking big bucks here, so even though, it was presented at the last meeting, the whole purpose of having a series of meetings is for people to bring forth ideas. And I think this one happens to be a particularly good one.
Thank you, Barbara. Kathy, did you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think, I'm not going to say don't do it, but I just say that, I guess my question would be, it's a pole vault landing system and an electronic sign are worth a 0.3 FTE. That's your trade-off. I'm not really sure if that's a good trade-off, or if you're concerned about that, or other than that, if the board votes to do it, they vote to do it, but I kind of agree. I think it was Gloria said that it's kind of these last-minute additions, and it's something to think about. You're just putting things in the budget just because, oh, that sounds good, so, I don't know. Once again, kind of tracking what Alan said, it's like the pole vault landing system, 0.01% of the budget, the sign is 0.02%, so we are talking about some very small items on a budget that is more than $100 million. So.
Okay. And now, I'll just ask, thank you, Kathy. Tim, do you want to weigh in on this issue?
Yeah, I would just make two quick comments. I definitely see both sides. I agree with Mrs. Colville with the comment about the process. That's something we can definitely go back and look at. But again, with the pole vault landing area, we're talking about a safety concern. That's just a paramount important. The sign is, in the world of education, incompletes are frowned by, in the classroom. We should definitely not have an incomplete sign. And one thing we do talk about throughout the budget process is technology, and we're always being out in the forefront of technology. I'm pretty amazed tonight to be doing this Google action here to be fascinating. And to have, again, it kind of sends a mixed message if we're not going to have a good functioning sign out in front of our high school. And as a representative for our district, it seems a little contradictory with a move towards technology. So I guess that's what I would just offer from. I think it's a good idea to get all of these things, or both of these things done.
Okay. Thank you. So based on that, it sounds like there's 5 board members that are strongly in favor of adding the sign or keeping the sign in the budget. So myself, Alan, Teresa, Barbara, and Tim. So we can continue to discuss it, but I'm not going to be changing my position, and it didn't sound like any of the others were.
So we can't discuss because
we can continue to discuss, but I'm just trying to keep my eye on the time.
Okay, well, we've talked about other things we're not even spending money ad nauseum. I don't understand why we wouldn't spend money passing the budget on an item that's like almost $20,000. And I know, like Alan said, in grand scheme of the whole budget, it might not be a huge thing, but it's more about the process. So I know Barb said, oh, if people had a problem with it, they might be here kind of arguing about it, which I don't even think people knew about it, because it was never even in the first round of the budget. It was like mentioned last week just from a board member, I think, and then that was it. And, I don't want to be misconstrued. I'm totally for a sign. Like 99% of the things that come across our desk, I'm like, woohoo, yeah, let's fund that. But just like a budget at home, we have to prioritize. We can't fund everything, but can we do both? If what Alan's saying that that we have a surplus and we could do both, I just, if I had to choose an electronic sign versus teachers who will impact students directly, I would always choose teachers. But again, I'm not against a sign. It just seems like it was thrown in at the last minute. To me, it seems like we're not really, listening. We didn't even give the taxpayers an opportunity to weigh in on that, or any of the parents who are all here speaking at the microphone, emailing us about class size and FTEs. And yes, it's unprecedented to have this, but do we really want to be in the position in the fall like we were this past fall, hiring a new teacher, spending 2 months reorganizing class sections? I think it's ridiculous. I mean, like I said, I'm not against a sign. I just think the process that was just kind of like thrown in at the last minute. I mean, if tonight I was like, oh, why don't we do a therapy dog instead of having I'm just picking something random, that I think is a great program, let's add that on too. I mean, there's so many programs I think are great, so many, pieces that would make, the school even better, to keep our technology reputation up. But I can't really respect, somebody throwing this out last second, not even giving the community an opportunity to talk about it. And then just, and we never even heard about it from the schools, like in that list that we got, which they prioritized.
If I can just jump in, and I respect wherever you land, because it's now the school board's budget. But we have, our sheets that we take great pains to send out in January. So there's a list of probably 10 things on this identified needs that our administrators came up with that aren't now possible. And that's fine, and they all understand that they're not going to happen. But there was a request here for funding for sources of strength at the middle school. There's requests for furniture in our business labs. There's requests for co-curricular stipends for the high school and the middle school that didn't make the list. So,
I mean, to me, it seems like on that survey that we sent out to the community, the social emotional needs of students was
Safety.
I think a high priority for all the different groups. So why would we not fund sources of strength at the middle school or give stipends to teachers for co-curricular, whatever they're doing, over that? Or why would we not even weigh that? Because, I mean, of course, I'd love to say yes to all of them, but we never even got to weigh those options. If someone mentioned that at the meeting last time, does that get passed through because one person mentioned it? I don't know. I don't know if that's the right way to do things.
Well, because we asked the district office, and they work that process. They set priorities, they gather that kind of information. But then we don't do that. We kind of just went under that and said, we didn't even look at the priorities. We just said, we want these couple of things, and we threw them out. And I don't think that's right. I think we are the board. I mean, we should be supporting whatever priorities that the district is moving toward. We've helped create them, the ones that, we have. We didn't do strategic planning, but we have done some work through communications and through surveys to gather the students, the parents, the staff's input on things. And we have those priorities that, as you referred to, with safety and emotional, social emotional issues and things like that. And so the budget was built with those in mind. And anything else we want to spend, we should go look at those priorities and say, that's where the money should go. Those are our priorities. Not just because somebody notices something, oh, let's do that, or this sounds good. We shouldn't be operating like that. I mean, and I fell into it too last time. I started to get drawn into that conversation, and I really got angry at myself afterwards as I drove home. I said, that's not the way we should be operating. We have process we should be following. And I agree, it's a small amount of money, but the big picture, Alan, is that process. If we start nibbling away at it and, we'll just throw 16,000 over here at that. If Regan really thought that was a safety issue, that would have been in his list.
Was it in the list? I don't know.
No,
It wasn't his list.
it was below, but it was.
It was? It was in the list. The only thing that's
Right.
not in the list.
But there was
is
no
the sign.
sign, and that was
I hear you,
somebody's.
the sign wasn't in the list. I'm not going to argue that it was or was not. That is, I'll agree that 100%. My big contention with the sign is this. Again, if you're a business, you don't do something halfway, okay? We put a sign up half well knowing that we could only afford half of it. We should have put none of it up until we could afford the whole thing.
Isn't the sign a
That's
class
what we should have
gift?
done.
But isn't it a class gift?
That was something, each school
But-
builds
no,
their own, each school
The money was a
gets
class
the money
gift.
for their
How you
sign.
spent the money was how you do it.
But each
Someone
school
chose-
does that, we shouldn't be telling them, each school
I agree.
does it
I'm
their
not
way.
disagreeing with it. The point I'm trying to make to you is, if we can't afford a full sign, don't put up a
But that's, you're saying that, but maybe the school decided, well, we have this much this year, we'll put half of it, that was their decision to make. Why should we circumvent and micromanage their decision? Every school,
Micromanage.
the elementary, middle, does that. They all decide how their signs
They
are
can
gonna be.
decide, but again, my opinion would be, why would you
Right.
put up a sign unless you can afford to put the whole sign up? Again,
that
just on another topic, I mean, when I look at the spending plan, and you go in and you look on page 5 of 7, we have in here on the list, replace instructional technology devices and peripherals. If we look on the computer assisted instruction, there are items called state aid computer hardware repair, state aid computer software. If you look at the budget spending comparison we had, there's roughly $30,000 that's available in there. I don't know why we're not using
Not
that stuff. Well, it appears as though there is, okay?
It does, because the licenses on certain softwares have not come due yet. So they will come due before the end of the school year, so they haven't
Going
been
to come due
expended.
before the end of the school year, then that money should be encumbered. When we know of expenses, at least when I went to school 40 years ago and we did government accounting, if you know of an expense, you're supposed to encumber it. Then what you really have over here to the right side is what is really truly available for things that you do not know about. And I'm assuming that's what this report is. I don't know if it is. I don't prepare it. But that's my assumption when I read this report. So when I go to the last page of this report, it says there's like $2.8 million is available. So again, my question would be, how, in the next 4 months, what are we going to spend $2.8 million on? I don't know. I don't run the place. I'm not in charge of the finance part here. But that's something we should know. And that's something we should know as a board. That's a question we should be asked. Because when you go to your BOCES training, they ask you for your fiscal responsibility. And my questions are in line with those fiscal responsibilities. And I still am at awe what we're going to spend $2.8 million on between now and the end of the year.
Do you mind if I respond?
Sure.
We've talked about the encumbering process before. We've talked about it, at least the business practices and maybe an audit too. I can't remember. But it's a labor-intensive process to go through, and that's really why we have the fund balance estimate report. Because otherwise, we just don't have the personnel to encumber and unencumber smaller expenses on a regular basis. It takes a lot of time to make those adjusting entries. So what we've tried to do is encumber where it makes sense to encumber, but not, I mean, we've been open about this. It's a lot of manpower to continue to do that every pay cycle. So we just don't have the personnel to do it. So that's why if you look at the fund balance report, that was intended to be a better way to manage a more accurate representation of fund balance without having to encumber every dollar and there's an encumbering process, and when there's an encumbering process, there's an unencumbering process that has to happen too in terms of a financial transaction. So it's a labor-intensive process, and we just frankly don't have the personnel to manage it in that manner.
I agree with that, but I'll also tell you, when you look at your fund balance report, it shows like a $1.7 million plus a $400,000 revenue, so which is almost $2 million. So again, I understand what you're telling me, and I don't have a problem with it, but the thing that you do have to understand is if the report that we're reading has got flaws in it because we don't have the staff to do it, we should have some process that identifies, that says, because that number out to the side, the way I read these reports is it's available. And if it's not available, we shouldn't list it as available. because we don't have the staff to tell it. Now, maybe what we need to do is have a process that estimates at a very high level, some level of encumbrance, like a general encumbrance, so that we can have a way to gauge what the number is, because the two reports should have some correlation, and they do for the most part, but again, there's about $1 million difference between the two. And to me, that's a little confusing to try to reconcile the spending report to the fund balance report, because they don't agree.
Right, and like I said, we've talked about that, we've talked about it as a process and why we do what we do. That's been discussed before, so again, if the board has willingness to change that, we can try to accommodate that, but it's difficult to do with the amount of staffing that we have.
Again, I think accurate information is important. If it's not accurate, then we really can't make good decisions. Okay, and if the reports aren't accurate because we don't have the staff to do it, then we're basing these reports to do decisions, that's hard to make an intelligent decision off of a report that doesn't have all the data in it.
And that's why we have the alternative report. I mean, we wouldn't need the fund balance estimate report if we're able to do the full encumbering.
Okay.
Seema?
Just, I guess my last comment about this, I'm just worried also about the precedent that we're setting. So going forward, anybody can bring up anything the week before the budget passes that was never discussed before. Why do we say no to that and yes to this? I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I guess some people are comfortable doing that. I just don't think we should be doing that willy-nilly, not really having a good reason picking one over the other without ever having discussed this. I mean, it's been a week. So I just think going forward, people are going to say, oh, well, you passed that. It was never brought up before. It was brought up the week before the budget passed. Here, why don't I come speak at the microphone, and here's 10 other things that I would like to add. I don't know. To me, it hasn't really rose to the level of discussion ever before last week. So, and no one even asked about it this past week since our Friday report when we get the budget. So, again, that's, to me, I'm worried more about the process and the precedent setting, not, of course, not against the sign. Of course, I'd love to have a sign that's lit on both sides.
Did we have 5 unassigned in the budget? Did we talk about that on the list, having 5 unassigned, or 4.7?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we talked a lot about that.
I don't remember,
Last
only
meeting?
last week.
Well, that was
What's the difference between that and a sign? You go from 4 to 5?
because
and
we've
you
been
put
talking
the
about
sign in. It's
because
the
we've
same
been talking
thing.
about
Talk
class
about on the
size and
signs forever.
teachers
But the
since
class
October.
size, again, my comment on class size, and I'll reiterate it again, our guidelines, we're within our guidelines. If we don't like our guidelines, and this isn't the time to change our guidelines, we should have a study to change our guidelines and adjust our guidelines. But every one of those class sizes is within the guidelines.
I completely
So
agree,
when-
Alan.
when-
I'm just saying that
But
we
when
had.
you look at the numbers,
I'm just saying we had a discussion about this, all of this, since October. So that's why I think that's fair, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that we've had these discussions for a long time, so this is not really a surprise. That's different than what we're talking about.
I think, Teresa?
I agree with what you're both saying, and I can appreciate what you're saying, Seema, 150%, and I completely understand where you're coming from. I will say that my understanding of the darn sign was that when it went up at the beginning of the school year, it was in the process of going up, where the antiquated 1950 sign, the brown sign, that's not even our school colors, finally came down, and they were putting up that other sign. I had a conversation with Cliff, and Cliff had said that he was hoping, this was a hope, he did use the word hoping, half that sign was going up by school funding, the students funding that sign, and he was hoping that there was money in the current budget to fund the rest, or fill in wherever they needed to fill in for the rest of the sign. So I was under the impression of, okay, it's a done deal. This sign will be completed. That's not what happened, obviously, because we're here now. I wasn't able to be here last Tuesday. I heard that this all went down last week. I am a proponent of the sign. I think we need the darn sign, and I'm going to agree with Alan that the amount of money that's being argued over, we need to do the sign. I'm also a proponent of not taking out the .3 FTE, because I agree when it comes to class size. Alan, we've had this discussion previously. Last year, I remember having this discussion about class size and Marie being very strong at the fact that they're guidelines, that it's not you have to be within this guide, it's a guideline. It's not a set rule that it can't go lower and it can't go higher. So with that being said, and I did watch the video of last week's meeting, it's a guideline, and obviously, even if you said the highest of that guideline is 20, there's going to be parents that are going to come in and say, oh, my kid's in a class of 20, why can't we have a class of 15? It's always going to be the case. You always want the smaller of the class size. At that same token, I can 150% agree that you do not want a class size of 25 and higher even for a kindergarten level when you're dealing with that age group. And you also don't want that for first, second, third grade because you're dealing with the issues that you have when you have that age group. It's not like a college lecture hall where you're having 100 people in a classroom and you're dealing with an adult, a young adult of 18, 19, 20 years old. So you do need to have a smaller class size, and I'll always be an advocate for a smaller class size. That number is always going to be an argument. 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, it's always going to be an argument, and no one wants to be of that higher level. But that being said, I do think that we need to we're here to educate students. So I would be a proponent of actually, since we shouldn't be that tight for money, that's also a $19,000 savings. I'm thinking we can find money just to have the extra FTE, it's 0.3, back into the budget. And maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe I'm really off and that it's not being able to be funded, but I think we could, what we're asking for, I think we can have. And with the other items that I agree with what Marie had said is that, all the division or district heads had gone through and had their wish list of things. I do feel bad that those things were not thrown on as well, but I'm going to stick to it. We need the darn sign. We need a sign in front of our high school. I don't know how it would end up working out. Maybe there's other funding that we can find that we don't need to add it into the budget. Maybe it's already there that we can maneuver funds. I don't know, Neil, if you can work magic, but we need a sign.
Kathy, I just wanted to say that I don't think we can have everything always. To put that pole vault landing system in that second side of the sign, that is why the .3 FTE came out. So I don't think you can have those two things and also take away that reduction and have us still be under the allowable tax levy limit since we're only $4,779 under right now. So I don't think the math would work.
Stan?
Yes.
We certainly could take some of our fund balance to, put that .3 back in, if that was our collective wisdom. As you probably well remember, I am a proponent of keeping those 5 plus the 2, because we have so many classes on the cusp that you want those available for Marie as the summer progresses and people move in and out, that she has them to use, and we're not scrambling to try to find funding.
Okay. Is there interest in taking additional money from the fund balance to put that .3 back in?
I think that we should just take out the pole vault landing system and the electronic sign, and then you can put it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you take money from the fund balance to fund these items that a number, like Gloria and Seema have pointed out, are just put in for some reason other than that they were on the priority list of restorations that the administration has. It doesn't make any sense to me. It just seems silly. Why would we want to keep these things in so badly that we will be willing to take money from the fund balance to put in another point FTE? It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. So, I would never do that.
Does anybody else want to comment on that? Alan?
The pole vault system, how much of a safety issue is that? Do we know?
Well, we had this conversation last week. From the beginning of the budget development process, Regan had included the $14,000 or $15,000 around the replacement of the pole vault. It is near or at the end of its life. We would like to replace it sooner rather than later. When we began the budget process, we remember how dire things looked. I mean, we are laying people off this year. I don't think we've remembered that, but there are people who will be laid off this year, connected to class size, to enrollment changes. So I think all three levels were very conservative in putting forward only those must-have needs. And the pole vault, was kind of on the cusp, so it did not make it into the first round of the budget. However, we take a lot of effort to put together these explanations of what we think we need and how much it costs and the FTEs and the impact that it will have on kids. So, if we don't do it this year, we absolutely have to do it next year. But more realistically, I think Regan's plan was to get the sports boosters involved and start doing some fundraising to, purchase it sooner rather than later. So I think that's why, of all of the items that were reintroduced when we had additional funding that we weren't expecting from the state, that was one that, rose to the level of let's talk about this during the workshop last week. So that's the difference between that and the sign. And I've had a few conversations with Mr. Lutzik about the sign, and I think he would have loved to put it on his list this year. But when we're asking our administrative team to come forward with 2% worth of reductions, and they're talking about staffing and equipment and materials and supplies for the instructional program, he didn't put it on the list. And I think that was probably appropriate at the time. So, I think we need a new landing system.
Well, I guess my real question with it is, since track season's upon us right now, okay, and they're going to be using
And they are using it.
So if it's a high likelihood that some kid's going to go out there, pole vault, fall and get hurt because we don't have the appropriate system, that's negligence on our part. So again, if it's a safety issue, much like it was a couple years ago with having nurses at certain places, we need to make sure that it's safe, okay? So my question really is if that thing is in dire need and it's not safe, then we don't have an option with this. We have to put that in.
Well, I would not want to say that we are having children land on unsafe equipment right now, because we're not. If it were unsafe, officials would have said, I'm sorry, you can't use that landing. We have not had that,
Okay.
but it's 18 years old, and it needs to be replaced.
I'm not disagreeing. I want to
just
make
don't
sure
want our
it's
community to
safe.
think, well, it's okay. It's because it's not, but we do need to replace it. If not this year, there's going to be some fundraising so that it can be replaced in time for next year.
All right, again, like my big thing is I don't want somebody to get hurt.
Nobody does.
I don't want anybody to get hurt. Okay, especially for $13,400 on a $100 million budget. I just we're stepping over pennies we're stepping over dollars to pick up a penny.
I think we have to go back to where we began in the process, where we were looking to close a pretty significant gap. And when that is the case, our administrative team does turn over every rock. So we get down to relatively small amounts of money in order to do that. So here we are restoring, and we always end up to relatively small amounts of money in order to figure out where we land. So, again, my whole thing in this matter is really just the process. And that's all I'll say. It's the process by which we bring forward proposals for consideration to the board and to the community.
And I think if we're talking fundraising, I would rather see fundraising for the sign and have the pole vault landing, because there is safety involved as that. That's just my feeling. And Barbara said she didn't hear a hue and a cry for people who didn't want it, but there wasn't a hue and a cry either for people who did.
I don't know that it's on anybody's radar.
No, I know, but it sounded as if, here it is, and I haven't heard it either way. Nor have I heard the pole vault landing, but I think that's a safety issue, and Regan did, I mean, I remember hearing about the conditions, which were terrible for that thing, and I would prefer to leave that in.
Can I ask a question about the sign? So $17,000 was fundraised, I'm guessing, because it's $17,000 to finish it, so I'm guessing it's got to be the same amount of money. So, right, am I off?
I'm going to invite someone from the high school to come and talk about this in detail, because they have really, this has not been a district project. It's been a high school project.
Well, that's my question, and I agree with what Alan had said, is that if you have this money, we were not indicating to the school, okay, you have this much money, I want an electronic sign. The fact that the students fundraised this much money, and they could only do half of it, and now we only have half a sign, and I think that looks poor. Why didn't we do a different kind of sign that would have been complete on both sides? Why an electronic sign if you can't do two sides of an electronic sign?
I just want to maybe clarify a little bit. So last year...
Anne Marie, you should use the microphone.
Just to clarify a little bit, because there's some questions about how the fundraising happened. So years ago, when I first came on as assistant principal, Mr. Lutzig and I spoke about the sign. So there was two signs out in the front. One was an old sign that had like the letters that you put in. I want to say it was the 1995 class. And there was another one that was 2001 sign. In looking at the old ways of doing letters, we didn't always have full words. I thought it was a pretty poor message to send as an educational system that we didn't have able to have full words. So we talked about electronic signs. We talked to Cliff about the infrastructure, what you need to do out there to get to electronic sign. So we started looking at pricing, looking at getting money figures of what kind of sign, what kind of technology, what the demographics, LEDs, things I had no idea about, but brought in vendors. So I was able to raise close to $5,000 for the one side of the sign. That was through t-shirt sales that I did, sales through staff, other things. Yes, some clubs help donate, but students, I didn't have a group of students helping to fundraise. The second side I've started to fundraise is only about $1,200 in the account right now. That is again from Red Sea t-shirts, from Spirit Rally items, from things that were offered to sell to help fundraise. I can definitely go to clubs and ask, do you want to help donate to the sign, which is what they helped do for the first side, but it wasn't one particular class that actually raised money for the sign. We can do that, of course. We can always ask our students, but I think it also goes back to our conversation about who are we asking to raise money for a sign for their school. And yes, they do give gifts. So what also happened 2 years ago, I want to say, if it's 2 years of my years are correctly, the sign actually fell. The old sign with the letters fell on one of our custodial staff as they were changing the sign, and that's why it came down. So I know we're talking about safety, but that was a concern. I mean, I don't want to give out a name, it's personal, but that did happen as well. So it kind of also gave this idea of, listen, we got to get a different sign. So when I spoke to Cliff, and Tom was there with those conversations, we knew we were short on funds for both sides. So we thought more traffic, looking at, items, and then, we do have one side right now. So I'm going to admit, I've had a fundraise for Sources of Strength, and I've had a fundraise for this sign, and my numbers are not where I would like to be at the end of the year. Cliff said, can you try to get $5,000 again for this year? I said, yes, I can. It just hasn't been able to happen for various reasons that I don't need to go in here any longer in the conversation. But those are some of the comments about the sign, and one of the, we use the snow to pile up the snow on the other side of the sign so you don't see it on the one direction. But there were pieces to this when we talk about fundraising. There's not a group of students. Like I said, I talked to the senior class advisors. They haven't had their vote. They haven't had their discuss on their senior gift, but they don't have 16. And if you take out the money that I've already fundraised, it'd be $15,707. That would be need to fundraise.
I'm confused by the amounts, because you said $5,000.
$5,000 was the first side.
Okay, so how are we paying 16?
Well, so $5,000 was for the first side. I've now raised $12,018. $12,000. You'd all be excited. So would I. $1,218 for the second side. So you take the price that is given. There's $1,200 in an account right now that has been fundraised.
I also think it's important to remember when we say, well,
Teresa, it costs
fundraise.
more than that.
Every club has something they want to fundraise for. Every class has something they want to fundraise for. You can't walk down the hallway. As parents, you guys know this too. You can't walk down a hallway here without buy this for track, buy this for Key Club, I mean, at some point, there's a saturation level, and you've got to start saying, whoa, wait a minute. And what is the club's priority for what that club wants to do? I don't think it's very genuine to, kind of say, hey, Club A, B, or C, can you, now contribute towards this? If they come to it on their own, that's one thing, but I think we start putting children in difficult positions when we're kind of, hey, how about helping out here? In a area where we're already maxed out as far as what parents have to do because, my kids fundraise too, and I know I was the one fundraising for the most part, so it is something to consider.
Just to tie also too, federal regulations have changed our dynamics in our fundraising. We have rules that when I was able to fundraise as a class advisor for many years, we were able to do candy sales and things. Federal regulations about food sales have really changed the competitive nature of how clubs can fundraise in our school. We can't do the bagel sales, the pizza sales, the candy in the boxes. I mean, I would make thousands of dollars for classes. We control in the building. I help oversee the co-curricular aspect of it. I don't oversee the booster clubs. So you'll see, the cookie dough and from other clubs. It's competitive, and I'm not disagreeing that this is a tough, difficult decision. Obviously, I know where my passions are, and my name is obviously out there as somebody who is a proponent of it, so I'm going to wear that on my sleeve. But there's also reasons why it's not so easy to get second side and where we are. So
But that's my point, and I don't want to, there's no reason for this amount of money, like we've been saying, to really make this such a big issue. But if we don't need to be a part of the decision of what kind of sign goes up there, and, I don't need to micromanage how the school is run. I don't need to do that as a board member. My point is the fact that we put up half a sign, and I just think it looks poor. So if you didn't have enough money to do both sides, maybe it should have been thought of to do a different kind of sign in which both sides could be used. Now, as a school, we have half a sign up, and I just feel like as a representative of the school, as a school board member, I have been asked by families that have high school students, hey, what are we doing with the sign? And I'm like, we aren't doing anything, meaning that we weren't involved in that. So I have no idea what we're doing with the sign. So as a parent, I'm being asked that question by a handful of parents that I'm familiar with. So I just feel like it's something that should be done. And I agree with the whole fundraising aspect. My wallet has been emptied every other week regarding this or that. And that's just the way fundraising is, and it's part of the package. I just think this darn sign needs to be up.
Yes, Barbara.
As I'm listening to all the hard work that they put in at the high school, the analogy I would bring, Crossgates Mall has a sign out there. It was the management that put the sign out there. It wasn't all the people that shop there, which would be equivalent to our students. You go to all these medical complexes, and there's a sign out there. And it's not paid for by the patients, and maybe indirectly, but it's put there by the administration. So I think we as a board have a duty to identify our high school. I think Tom's point that, parents are constantly asked for fundraising, and they're tapped out. So, as I said, as the governing board, we should run a sign there, and I just hope that we leave it in the budget.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I have to agree with one thing you said, Teresa, and, to the high school people, that if you're going to, and also Crossgates people who are going to put out a sign, management putting out a sign, if you're going to do something like that, you should have the money. I mean, first. You should raise the money and then, but to say, oh, we're going to put this elaborate sign up and then not have the money and only have, I mean, that to me is where.
It's poor.
That's
manage that.
Right.
And we didn't need to be asked, hey, are you okay with us using this money towards this kind of sign? We don't need to be told that as a board.
No, but I'm saying as a practice, that's what should be done. You should set up a fund, we want a new sign, set up a fund, raise the money. Whatever money you have, that's the kind of sign you get.
I agree.
Now it's stuck.
You could have had a nice wooden sign or a nice whatever sign.
Whatever.
But now we have this, I just feel like as a board, and I'm not saying it's a mistake, I don't know what word to use, but we need to fix it so that it looks complete. I'm just going to be a proponent of that, I'm sorry.
And my point is, this discussion could have happened for months at all of our board meetings about the budget. We've never even
Could've been
had
in the
this
budget.
discussion until tonight. You know, and like, we got that table in January with all of the needs from all of the buildings, like sources of strength at the middle school. Like, why would we just randomly put this on at the last meeting? And we never even had this discussion at all until tonight. To me, it just seems like going forward then, and someone's just gonna bring up whatever else at the last minute. Let's talk about every budget item at the last minute. I mean, I just don't think that's the right thing to do. I'm sure, you know, if you thought a little bit more thoughtfully about it, that you would think, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't just be passing things at the last second without having discussion. You know, each of us are only one of 9 people. We never even had this discussion with all of us before. And like I said, of course, I'm for a sign, but if we have to prioritize, I agree with Kathy. I don't think we should be going into the fund balance, you know, and adding something at the last second that we've never talked about. Whereas we've talked about class size and teachers since the very beginning of the school year. I just think it's kind of insane to do that. But, you know, obviously it's the will of the board. I'm not in agreement with it. I hope everybody, you know, can say how they came to this conclusion at the last second, because I can't say I did.
I'm not leaving, I'm just kidding.
The temperature's going down right
Are there any
there.
other,
Some of the conversation.
any other questions or comments about this or the budget?
Could you poll the board on adding those things or those optional things so we know?
Sure. Okay, so the budget as presented in front of us here does include the pole vault landing, the electronic sign, and the removal of .3 unassigned teaching positions. So, do you want me to start over here, or Judy, do you want to start?
One at a time?
Yep, one at a time.
Oh, wait, I mean, you're going to do one issue at a time or all of them?
We can, do you want to just talk, yeah, we'll talk about all 3.
Okay.
Okay. Judy?
I would like to see the pole vault landing system because I think it's a safety issue. I would not like to see the electronic sign because it puts us awfully close to the edge. And if the unassigned teaching is the only way we can keep us under what we need to do, then I would leave it like it is, the minus .3. I would prefer to have it in there, but it's going to...
Too close.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're comfortable with the pole vault landing system and the removal of the .3?
Comfortable with the pole vault landing system and...
I don't want to say comfortable.
Yeah, I'm not
but-
comfortable with it, but I if that has to be, that has to be.
Okay. Gloria?
I would support taking out the pole vault landing system and the electronic sign. And I'd like to see us keep the .3.
Okay. I'm comfortable with the budget as written, with the inclusion of the pole vault landing system, the inclusion of the electronic sign, and the removal of the .3. Seema?
Would like to keep the .3 FTE. If we don't have to go into the fund balance, then I'd like to keep, you know, I guess in order, then the pole vault, and then the sign. If we do have to go into the fund balance, then I guess working backwards, I would remove the sign, I'd remove the pole vault, going it that way. So my priorities are FTE, pole vault, and sign.
Okay,
And I don't want to go into the fund balance.
So you want to restore the .3?
Yes.
And remove the other 2? Or
Yes.
what we can do without having
Right,
to go? Okay.
right.
Alan?
I'm good as the way it's written.
Okay. Teresa?
I'm going to say I want it all. I want the 2 items and the unassigned .3 put back in. I don't think that 19,000, taking that out is necessary, and if we do need to take it out of fund balance, I'd be okay with 19,000 coming out of the fund balance.
Okay.
I do want it all.
Kathy?
I would say I could live with the pole vault landing system. I don't think we should do the sign. And if we did it that way, and we might be able to reduce, maybe we wouldn't need minus .3, maybe we could have a .2 or a .1 to balance out the pole vault landing system. I'm not sure exactly how it would work, but I would not take anything from the fund balance to do any of this. I would say, under no circumstances would I do that. I would just try to adjust it. If the pole-vault landing system is in there and the sign is not, I would just try to adjust the unassigned teaching position to balance it out.
Okay. Tim?
Can I just ask for a clarification? I'm just curious, earlier there was discussion about the reserve funds that are set up, and there's a reserve for repairs that was at 50,000, and I think it's accumulated to 55,000. I might be off a little. Is there a reason why that money can't be used for repairs of that pole vault landing area?
It's not so much a landing area as a landing mat system, so it's something portable, it's not a fixture.
So it's equipment.
Yeah, it's equipment, it's a mat.
We're replacing it, not repairing it? Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so those funds cannot be used for equipment.
Right.
That's considered to be a facility repair, the reserve? Or,
A leak, a broken
yeah, boiler,
boiler.
something like that, more of a physical plant kind of thing.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because it seems like that reserve has not been touched at all, so maybe it could have been used, but that's fine. Thanks for that information. I would go along with budget as is.
As presented? That's what he said? Okay.
With the, well, for those three items, basically yes for the landing system repair, yes for the sign completion, and the 0.3 would be out. And that's what I'm good with.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Barbara?
You're welcome.
I can live with what's presented, but I certainly would support a motion to add to that, the .3, with it being balanced out by the fund balance. I don't think there's enough support for that.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. Marie, did you track all of that?
I was trying, I gave up.
So what's the final word?
There is no final, I mean, you have variations.
Plays all over the roadmap, basically.
Yeah.
So
Neil, can I ask a question regarding the pole vault? What happens with any sort of athletic equipment, like even as simple as a basketball and those kinds of things that, you know, because you had said it's not a fixture, it's something that's movable. Where does that money come from?
Or supplies?
Any sort of athletic thing, the baseball bats, the lacrosse sticks, like all that equipment, like where does that money come from?
Parents, because most kids have their own equipment now. It's not like the old days where, when I played baseball, the coach brought out the bag of bats and you picked one out. Now everybody has
It's
their
out like a football helmet, that's issued by the
football.
school.
Yes, those are issued by the school. And
So-
for safety purposes, they have to
For
be.
the same purpose.
Yeah, so
But
that's,
that's what I'm saying, for the same purpose, that's a safety issue, is a helmet, so with this pole vault mat, you need it, you can't play it, you can't use anything without it. So my question is, where does that money come from typically?
well, it would come from equipment
The budget.
replacement. So that's, which is where it was indicated. So this is a piece of equipment supply. It's a more expensive item, and that's why we're calling it equipment as opposed to a minor supply item that's used up and is consumable. But that's where it would come from, is the budget process. So when we've had major goals.
But typically, it doesn't come from fundraising, is what I'm saying, something like this.
No, it wouldn't typically.
It would come from the school.
Okay, so considering the responses that we got, Marie and I just discussed this, what we're going to do is take a vote on the pole vault alone, the electric sign alone, and then the unassigned and the fund balance in conjunction to better gauge where everybody is. So may I have a motion to approve keeping the pole vault landing system in the budget as presented? Alan, second Seema. All those in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Aye.
Okay, so everybody but Gloria. Okay. Now, may I have a motion to approve keeping the electronic sign in the budget as presented? Alan, second Teresa. please raise your hand if you're in favor of this, or say
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, and Barbara?
Yeah, Barbara,
Barbara's
that's a
there.
yes?
Yes.
So that's 5.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, in terms of the unassigned teaching position, I'm not really sure how to handle this.
Well, now people are going to have to
I
change,
guess-
because now the other two are in.
Okay, so I guess the next one should be, who's in favor of taking money from the fund balance to bring
bring
the
them back.
unassigned back in? Okay, so may I have a motion to approve taking money from the fund balance to bring the unassigned back in? Barbara, second. Seema? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
1, 2, 3,
Aye.
4.
You picked a sign over FTEs.
So wait, well, I didn't catch the vote on that. I don't know if Linda did.
4 to 5.
Barbara's got her hand up, I have my
Yes.
hand up.
It's 4.
Seema had her
1,
hand up.
It
2,
was only 4, I think.
So the motion was to
take money
Take
from
money
the
from
fund balance to restore
to
the point.
restore the point 3.
Okay,
Yes.
That went down.
so,
Okay, let's do it again, okay. In favor of taking money from the fund balance to restore the FTE, please raise your hand. Teresa, Seema, Christine,
Oh, shit.
Barbara,
And
Yes.
Tim.
and Tim.
Now it's 5.
5.
You didn't vote before, Christine, that's why we weren't counting you.
Thank you.
So we're not voting for sign versus FTE at all, because
Right.
that could change people's answers. I mean, maybe not, but I'm just saying,
so
just saying.
we're reducing the fund balance by
Another
$19,500.
Can I just say something? I just think you've established a pretty bad precedent. I mean, I'm not going to be here for future budgets, but you're going to have to live with that, you know? You're going to have to live with this, well, we'll just put random items in and take things from the fund balance at the last minute. So, you know, just be prepared for all your,
future
you know, everything
budgets.
that's going to go down on that, so, you know.
Even though we've heard about FTEs since October, probably earlier than that, we actually had to deal with it in the fall and have special meetings to have an extra section at Altamont, and had to hire someone and totally, disrupt the classroom in the fall to change this. But I also agree with Kathy. I think this is a bad precedent to set. Going forward, it's going to be, everybody's just going to throw things in at the last second. There's going to be no discussion. Again, I'm not against a sign, but it's kind of, wild, wild west, just putting whatever.
Well, and I think we've held the district office to a high standard, and we're not maintaining that. We're not following a process that we really set up. And at the last minute, we're ignoring it.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Linda, do we need a roll call vote for this or no? Okay. So now we need,
a motion to approve the budget,
The amended budget.
the amended budget. And Neil is plugging in the numbers, so
The number I have is $100,925,515.
can you say it one more time, Neil?
$100,925,515.
So that's up from, oh, no. Yeah, that's
It's
still
up,
up.
but it leaves us
What is it again?
$100,925,515.
And we're still okay with the tax levy and all of that?
Yeah, we're in the exact same place we are with the tax levy because the offset was to
through the-
lowering the use of fund balance.
What's the percentage increase on the budget?
2.48.
2.48?
Right.
Christine,
yes, Barbara.
wouldn't you want to add another $1,000 from the fund balance to bring his 4,000 up to 5?
Neil? He's shaking his head no.
Oh, okay.
So the other adjustment, since you have the 19,500 as a plus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that changes.
That makes 100,000 what? 81.5 or 80,500?
80,500.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the adoption of the 2018-2019 budget. Gloria? Gloria, second Barbara?
Yep.
Any additional questions or comments?
My only question is, do we have to state what the amount is or not, so it's clear? Do we? Do we have to state that it's amended to the amount, and the amount that it's amended to? So
Just
it's
send it
made
to
official as part of the motion, that's what I'm asking.
Yep.
Okay, so it has to be, the motion really has to be
Okay.
moved to adopt a budget of 100
Budget as
million.
amended to $100,925,515.
Right. Then you can have the same seconds and
You want me to say it again?
Yeah, she just did.
I just
Okay. All right. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 9-0. Thank you. Marie?
We're not done yet. We also need to pass the property tax report card for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. You have the chart, you have the actual report card. Those numbers will be amended, though, to reflect the $100,925,515 budget.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the 2018-19 property tax report card
As amended.
as amended?
I just have a quick question.
Yep, let me do the,
Okay.
Alan, second, Teresa. Teresa, question?
Yeah, the amount that's proposed, and this is just probably needing clarification for me. It says proposed budget 2018-19, 100,906,015. And, okay, so now we've gone from that
To 925, 515.
I got you. I was looking at the wrong number. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, can you just kind of, I had a hard time following what the difference between these two numbers, other than fact it's budget to budget comparison. What's the purpose of the report card? What's it tell us?
It's a state mandate.
That tells it
That
all.
I figured. That says it all, right? That I figured.
It folds in elements of the tax levy limit calculation. I think what the intent here is to provide an easy-to-read document for the community. I don't believe it's that easy to read, but this came out of the property tax cap legislation that school districts would adopt this. So it's showing you what the budget is, and then it's talking about the tax levy and what's the maximum tax levy, and also tells you whether you are above or below the threshold that requires a 60% vote. And I think that is part of that letter I line becomes very important if you in fact approve a budget that's in excess of the tax levy limit. So I think the real intent is to demonstrate to the voter, whether you're exceeding the tax levy limit or not, and whether a 60% vote is required.
This is something I thought was interesting.
Okay, so I guess just to kind of paraphrase, there's two things that stick out on this to me, okay? Is letter I, last year we were well under the 60%, two-thirds majority or whatever the number is, the super majority, that's the words I was looking for. Where this year we're much tighter to the cushion. That's the first thing I see on this. And the second thing that sticks out is in column F. Why would our exclusions go from 2.468 down to 1923? What drives that number?
Debt. Debt is a
Debt?
big factor. Yep, capital
Okay, so
expenses.
as you repay debt, that number goes down?
Right.
Okay, so when we add the capital project that we're closing out right now, that doesn't factor into this proposal? It has to wait until the following year?
If there's debt that's expiring in that year, it's year to year, so it depends on where the flow is. So what we've had is debt dropping off from 2010 project is what's coming off.
Okay, but what about the debt that we're gonna assume with the 2000, what is it, 15, 14? I don't know what this project number is, what year it is.
The one we just completed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's already included.
That's
We've
included
already
in the
done
number?
serial bonds for that, so.
Wow, just that 2010 project really dropped the debt down
Yeah.
delta by that? Wow, what did we
Well,
do
there's buses in there, it's debt service year to year, so. $600,000. The debt, we refinanced that, and that debt is rolling off.
Okay, all right.
And that's
Thank you.
from 2010.
That helps explain it, okay, I get it now. Thank you.
I was
And
interested to see that our population is going up by almost 90 kids, or 87. Is that increased in the lower grades, or is it just generally?
Most of it is in the
Elementary.
primary level.
Yeah, okay.
And then, down at the bottom where you have the adjusted restricted fund balance, 7903 versus 8562, what's driving that increase? It's down in the chart at the very bottom.
Well, that's a function of, the fund balances that we have now, plus an assumption that some of the end-of-year surplus could go to fund balance. It's an assumption.
Okay. So the difference between 8562 and 7903, would that be addition of the reserves that we talked about earlier, potentially? Or would they be other reserves that we would be establishing?
No, we don't. Right now, we're not recommending the establishment of any new reserves. We have existing reserves. The one that obviously would be a good place, as we talk about a facilities project, is the capital reserve that was established last year.
Okay, so those restricted reserves is where we would look to increase if we have such a... That's what this assumption's making here.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Because we can't exceed 4%.
We're also assuming that we're going to grow the unrestricted fund balance from 605 to 830, right?
That's the appropriated fund balance. So the amount that we're using to...
Oh, I'm sorry. My eyes went in the wrong line. Okay, we're going from 39 to 4036, so we got roughly a $100,000 increase in there.
Yep, and that keeps us within the 4%. Or at the 4%.
Okay. Thanks for those explanations.
Are there any other questions on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 9-0. We also have the 3 items from the consent agenda, Alan, that we need.
We talked about them during the budget, so...
But we still need to approve them, I guess. Okay. So may I have a motion to approve the revenue report for the period ending March 31st, 2018, the expense report for the period ending March 31st, 2018, and the fund balance estimate report for the period ending March 31st, 2018.
So moved.
Alan, second. Judy? Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 9-0. Okay, now we move to Board President action items, of which there are 2 this evening. The first relates to the adoption of an amended 2018-19 school calendar. Marie, do you want to briefly just describe what that one change was to the calendar?
The day after we adopted this calendar last year, I received word from Anita Murphy, who's our BOCES district superintendent, that the BOCES had decided to move their April break to the week after the one we had already approved in order to line up with neighboring BOCES who had also made the change. So we all need to be on the same page because we have kids coming and going across district and BOCES lines. So our April break will now begin on Good Friday, April 19th, and run through April 26th. And every district in the BOCES, Questar BOCES, Wishwe BOCES, and Hamilton, Fulton, Montgomery BOCES is doing that as well. So.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
So may I have a motion to approve the adoption of the amended 2018-19 calendar? Teresa, second. Alan, are there any questions or comments?
It'll make Myrtle Beach warmer.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0. And we have one more item for approval this evening, which relates to the appointment of election workers for the May 15th budget vote and election. Recommended for appointment are the individuals that are listed in front of you on the board portal to serve as election workers at the budget vote and elections on May 15th, 2018. May I have a motion to approve the appointment of the election workers?
So moved.
Judy, second. Alan, are there any questions or comments?
Just one question. These people get paid, right? It's not volunteer, right? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. And do they work a full day shift or do they work 8-hour shift?
Some work full, the ones that actually are assigned to the machine, they work a full day. Typically, everybody else will work a portion of a day, so we have a morning and then an afternoon. We might have a couple of people that are doing the full day of service.
Does Albany County bring over, since we use those, the computer machines, do they bring over people to assist or not?
No, they don't, but the people that oversee the machine have to be trained by Albany County, so we send them down for training on how to handle any issues with the machine, so they're Albany County trained.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0. And now we move to board committee reports. Audit?
We're meeting on Wednesday, the 25th at 8:15.
Great, thank you. Business practices, Kathy?
Well, we recently had 2 meetings at which we had a quite lengthy discussion of budgetary items, just kind of an explanation and an opportunity to ask questions. On March 22nd, we discussed utilities, gas and diesel fuel, and benefits. And on March 27th, we discussed special education and staffing. So there's a lot of detail, and I think that I assume we probably would have some minutes or some summary of that available to the board to look at if they want to.
Posted shortly. I'm a little behind on my minutes, so got one almost done.
A lot of detail, so I won't go into it here, but we did discuss all of these things in a lot of detail.
Thank you. Communications, Gloria?
We met on March 23rd, and one of the items we discussed was getting out information on the budget to the community. So we talked about things like, using the Altamont Enterprise, of course, and Marie getting out and speaking. There's a Westmere community group I think you speak at. Chamber PTAs were all asked. I think we've all been asked to verify which PTA meetings will be there when the budget is discussed. And the use of the newsletter, of course, and getting that out. And we talked about what to focus on regarding the budget in the newsletter, so we had some discussion on that. The second item regarding our handbook that we're putting together for board members, we're still on target. We reviewed section 1. There are 5 sections, and you have already returned in first 3 sections with additions and corrections. So we took section 1 and looked at everybody's ideas. Marie was kind enough, and Linda would put it on the weekly report. I did get one suggestion from Teresa to change one word from will to should, but we'll talk about that at the communications and see how that goes from there. I didn't get any others, so I'm assuming...
What week was it on the report? I must have not looked
Friday.
in the right spot. This past Friday?
With the communication.
The team's communication, yeah.
Maybe I looked in the wrong pew. Was it in your?
It was in my
Right at the end.
communication, yeah. It was an attachment.
It was a
It was
separate
attached,
link.
the whole section was attached
I
with...
remember seeing it, but that doesn't
Okay.
mean that
All
I
right.
didn't read it.
Well,
It just means
we're
that-
meeting on the 23rd, which is Monday. So if between now and next Monday, get a chance to look at it.
I'll read it, but I
So
doubt
the
I'll have
committee
it.
looked at the suggestions that were made by everyone here. We put together what we think is a good representation of our ideas. So we're hoping that part is done, that section 1 is done. So I'll assume that unless I receive any more communications on that, we're moving to section 2 and 3 at our next meeting, which is next Monday.
And that bolded language is the language that was added in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seema.
Can we add something to the agenda for the communications report? So last week when I was at Westmere PTA, one of the, I don't remember who said that there were several parents that had emailed the board, either the whole board or smaller groups of the board, and some people got responses, some people didn't get any response, and I can understand what they're saying. They wanted to make sure someone received their email, that it just didn't go into like a black hole. So I know we've talked about it before, about a process in terms of like someone responding, or at least like some kind of like standard response one person sends. I don't know if it's the board president, and I explained that sometimes when people email only like 3 of us, we don't know who gets what. It's hard to keep track of, 9, and it's better to email all because it gets shared. I know we've talked about it before. I know it's not perfect, but maybe we can talk about that process. because they were, they felt badly, some people that had emailed and didn't hear any response.
Yeah, we can, and actually look at our handbook, what the language is there that we put
Okay.
in for now.
I'm just relaying that.
I will ask that you have section 4, you should all have section 4, which was supposed to be due April 10th. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, talking to Linda, we're going to have section 4 is called planning. And let's make the due date May 1st, which is the next time we'll meet. If you could bring your suggestions for any changes.
Was that given on Tuesday?
Section 4.
I only have section 5 in hand. Was that last
I
Tuesday?
got 2 section 5s, yeah.
Section 5s, you should have a section 4.
I think I
That's
had.
That
fine,
one was
right?
given a while ago.
When, it was a while
No,
ago?
it was due April 10th.
Due April 10th, but it was given to us a while ago.
Oh, yeah, it was given out February 13th.
Maybe you
Oh,
could just
okay.
resend it with like a due date and say, read this.
Okay.
'Cause it's
You
been a
think
while.
so, Linda? Could you have Deb do that? All right, we'll resend for those of you that lost your 4 or it's somewhere in cyberspace. Section 4 is called planning, and it was given out February 13th, but you'll see it says February 13th. But instead of April 10th, we'll make it the next board meeting, if you bring your corrections, and then we'll work on that for the next time. So we're right on schedule, though. We should be done this year. Get this handbook done. So we are meeting Monday, 8 a.m. at Farnsworth.
Thank you, Gloria. Policy, Barbara, do you have anything to add?
No, we have another meeting coming up in April.
In April, okay. Okay, and now we move to public comment number 2. Linda, has anybody? Okay. And now board issues, ideas, and sharing. Does anybody have anything?
I just have a couple of things that are both still going on. One is the elementary art exhibit at the library, which is wonderful. If you're at the library, make sure you stop in and look at it. It's very impressive. And also at Linwood, they have the Women in History, where they line the one hall with the kids cut out the characters of women and write something about each of them. And it's really delightful to look at. And so if you could find a reason to be there, I think everybody would enjoy seeing it.
I just wanted to comment, also at the library, on Saturday I was able to attend an event for the E equals MC square. Students who were presenting their research
really
projects.
nice. Yeah.
And it was very, very impressive. It was really nice to be able to go and meet them and see their work, and they're just doing some amazing things.
If I can just jump in, their full symposium is June 7th. So Saturdays was just 4 of the kids, but the full symposium that they do in the high school auditorium is June 7th.
Thank you.
I have one cute one. Derek Koff is one of our social studies teachers, stopped by my office the other day with these signed photographs from our Model UN students who went to Yale and Brown to participate in the Model UN activities, and they dropped them off with their signatures and thanks, and I thought you'd enjoy seeing them. They had a terrific experience, so they're...
Is that just a one day? One of them is
It's
at least-
overnight.
Okay, yeah. I
It's
thought.
intense, and
Yeah.
they did a great job, very successful, but I always enjoy getting these, so I thought I'd
Yeah.
share.
Yes.
What grade is that, Mary?
What's that?
What grade?
It's high school, it's the Model UN Club, so it's,
Can be anywhere 9 through 12.
I believe so. They tend to be more upperclassmen, but it's a club, it's not a course.
That was a wonderful thing you talked about in your weekly update about the young man who's...
Oh, and the visit
In
from
the
the Board of
region?
Regent?
The region?
Oh, yes.
That is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
I can't get over that.
Yeah, remind us again, I read it and I thought it was great.
So Jonah Goldstein, we all probably remember Jonah, who many times addressed this board advocating for enrichment at the middle school, is a member of the EMC Square group and is writing his thesis about education. He met Bev Odekirk, who is one of the members of the Board of Regents, about a year and a half ago, when BOCES sponsored a regional event where people could give feedback on the Every Student Succeeds Act, and we asked Jonah to go and give feedback. The two of them hit it off, and they have been exchanging emails. She actually came here about a year ago and had lunch with Jonah to talk about public education. They share an interest in moving assessments to be more performance-based rather than paper and pencil. So last week, she called up and asked Deb if she could meet with me, and of course, I say yes. So she meets, and we're 10 minutes into our conversation. She goes, well, can we track down Jonah? So we did. He was in Amy Salamoni's AP English class, so we walked up to Amy's classroom. We interrupted instruction, had a lovely conversation with the class and Mrs. Salamoni, and Jonah stepped out for a little bit. The Board of Regents she is wishing to bring his thesis to the Board of Regents for their consideration and review. It's an informal kind of thing, but so the pressure to finish his thesis went from intense to on steroids. So he's working on finishing up his project, and we'll share it with her probably this summer. He needs to finish the thesis, defend it in May. It'll be part of the symposium in June, and then perhaps be able to share his work with the Board of Regents. But in my 29 plus years, I can say I have never interrupted a class with a Board of Regents member to ask a student to leave. And she is not our representative either. So it was something.
That's amazing.
It was a great day. He was so excited and honored.
Well, he should be, as he should be.
Yeah, really.
So were you apparently, and you should be.
I was just the navigator of School Tool. Where is he? So, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Anyone else?
I was wondering, could I just ask a question? Damien, have you begun thinking about the priorities meeting in May?
We don't have one scheduled.
Oh, we're not doing that?
No.
Oh, I'm glad I asked. Why not?
We haven't done one in a couple of years.
I know, but you think now would it? Okay.
Well, last year, we thought it would be replaced by strategic planning.
Right, but that got,
and that didn't.
That went out the window, so I would think we would go back to something.
We should be doing something.
I think it's a good idea.
I would think we would consider having that again. I mean, since we dropped it. And I think we need to give direction if Damien's going to start thinking about it, because I know what a monstrous job it is.
It's an undertaking.
It is. It's a huge undertaking.
I think we would very much welcome direction on what that would look like and how it should be framed. I think that would be a really important thing to do. So I think we're very interested in having a conversation about the big picture, what direction are we going in.
Right.
Honestly, we do that in I'm trying to pick the right word here, but we do it in sometimes it's not unintentional because we're very clear on but it's not plain in public. It's reason why we need some form of a pathway forward. I won't call it, but it's
we won't call it strategic planning. Let's say it.
But we absolutely. I mean, I think we have a pathway forward when it comes to meeting the needs of all students, and you see it reflected in our inclusionary practices and our attempts to strengthen the amount of supports we provide for social emotional growth of our students. You see a pathway forward when we talk about technology and our STEM Academy and those kinds of things, but it doesn't happen at this level. And we would love for it to happen at this level. It would make the conversation we had about this piece of paper
so much
very different.
So you would like direction on that? How should we go about providing that? Should it go through a committee, or should we put it as an agenda item at a future meeting?
Maybe it's a matter for the whole board to discuss rather than committee. So maybe next time.
We'll put it on the next board meeting. Okay. Thank you, Gloria.
Can I just add something
Teresa?
quickly that we've mentioned this before at previous meetings, but I feel like it's not always addressed. Whenever something is brought up from the public, or even in this portion of our budget meetings, is there a way for us to have a checklist so that, yes, that was addressed, kind of a thing? Because I think a lot of times things are brought up by community members or even us in this portion of the meeting that we forget about. And I think there needs to be some sort of way to check to make sure, like, you had mentioned something about families not really feeling that they're being heard or that they're not seeing that their email is being read, they're not getting a response that's going to committee or to communications. Is there a way for us, for just the general public, and for us to make sure things are being addressed that are being brought up? Is there something in place that I'm not aware of, I guess I should ask?
We attempted to create a flow chart, and it didn't work because the steps in the flow chart didn't match reality. So it didn't work. So we don't have a formal process other than
We talked a long time about
making a
it.
note
At
and
the
following up.
Communications Committee.
You mean at this meeting?
Either right
Teresa?
here, right now, at this point of the meeting, or even with public forum, where they bring up and say, hey, I have an issue with X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I feel like things, oh, yeah, that's right, that was brought up 3 meetings ago, and I don't know whatever happened with that.
I think it would be a good idea maybe if the board president kept track, so we could come back to
when we
that.
had this, I think you were there at the meeting, we had this conversation at Communications Committee for a long time about how to do this well, and I think what you referred to is what we ended up feeling, that when something comes up, like when Seema mentioned, I think, that it be referred to a committee right away. And so that it doesn't just get lost, that it, right then and there, somebody's going to take it and go with it. So now I've got it written down to deal with in my committee, so it's not getting lost.
Okay.
But I think we have to watch that, and so if you see something come up, and that we continue to do that. We have a thing that we don't respond when people come and give comment, but if there's an issue, then I think the president would say, is this something Marie wants to follow up on, or Damien wants to follow up on?
Okay.
Alan?
I partially agree with that. Normally, when we have these type of things at work, we have someone who takes minutes, and they're usually memorialized in minutes as action items, and then what happens at the next meeting, they're on the agenda with a follow-up as to like what that is. So I would recommend that if we want to have that type of calendar so we can keep track of what we're doing, someone should direct Linda to make it a component of the minutes, and then we would have a follow-up at the next meeting, because those would be action items that we would discuss at the next meeting. That way, they'll always be kept in light as to, like, if they're that important, they'll be addressed, because they're in the minutes, and they're part of the public record, and two, the resolution will also be in the minutes and also part of the public record.
Right, but in order for Linda to make a comment like that, we have to take the responsibility.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we have to do that, and then she will write it down, of course.
Someone needs a director at the meeting, which typically would be the president. Say, okay,
Yeah, that's what
let's
I'm
make
saying.
that an action item for an upcoming.
Well, like, for example, just asking you, Linda, like when I said before that I would take that idea to Communications Committee about the email thing, did that make it in the minutes? Yeah, so that's how we've got to be more attentive to that, so that when somebody says something like that, it gets taken.
That works in this setting right here
Yeah.
at this point of the meeting, but
Yeah.
at public forum, that never is said.
No,
Because it's
we have
public forum, and it's not
Well,
part of.
when people come to the microphone and talk, we have a policy that we don't respond back and forth.
That's what I'm saying, so
But-
that we need to address
But if an
as
issue is
well.
raised, then the president would have to say that that's something that,
Let
Yeah.
such and
Follow
such a
up.
committee follow up on that.
or such and such a person, if it's an issue.
So at the end of public comment, just kind of summarize, these seem to be outstanding issues, and then figure out what the
Sometimes they're just
disposition's going to
Do
be
they
at
need
that
follow,
point.
sometimes they're just a comment.
Well, sometimes it
Yeah,
is just a
right.
comment, but sometimes it's a standing issue of my child is having X, Y, and Z issue. Can we have it addressed?
Sure.
And we want to make sure that we're addressing issues and not having them fall by the wayside.
Right.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, so then we need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Alan, second Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, Barb.